Neves Solicitors are proud to sponsor The Parent Show. The friendly team at Neves includes specialists who can guide you through all the legal ups and downs of family life. Visit nevesolicitors.co.uk. Neves Solicitors, your complete legal solution.
Welcome to The Parents Show on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM. I'm Lydia El-Khoury.
And I'm Cathy Weston.
Now, barely a day goes past in the news without us reading something about mental health of children and teens. And there's a really good reason for that. Recent research indeed, shows that there's been an explosion of mental health issues in children and teens. And we've two excellent guests on the show this evening to talk to us about this subject. First up, we're going to be speaking to a young lady and a local student, Sanyha Aktar, who is an outspoken vlogger and blogger and is really passionate about improving mental health provision in schools and young mental health in general. So we're really looking forward to talking to Sanyha in just a few minutes about her experience. And later on, we'll be speaking to Maher from VISTA St Albans about what services they're providing, what Joe thinks about current mental health provision in schools in St Albans, and about the situation in general. So let's start off by talking to Sanyha. Welcome to The Parents Show.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
It's our pleasure, our pleasure. So we're going to put up all your vlog and blog links on the on our Facebook page as we're going along. But tell us why you took up the cause of mental health in children and teens.
Well, I started up my blog in January 2016 as a way of expressing myself, because in the last 2 years I lost interest in things that I used to be interested in. January 2015 I was diagnosed with severe depression, and in the last 2 years I've been battling with depression, and I've gone through a lot and learnt a lot throughout my journey. I've learnt a lot about mental health, and I've realised that the topic's too important to ignore, which is why I started blogging about it, and also I started up a YouTube channel in July this summer. So February 2016 of this year, I opened up about my mental health on Time to Talk Day from the Time to Change charity, and I also did an assembly at my school in front of 200 students, opening up about my experience and how I struggled with self-harm and suicidal thoughts. In 2015, I was referred to CAMS, and I attained therapy there for 2 years. And recently, I was referred to Youth Talk, which I'm still going to currently for counselling. And my blog allowed me to find myself again, I suppose, because I've always had a passion for beauty and fashion, and that was a way of me expressing myself in a good way and doing things I love to do. So yeah.
So you took the medium of blogging and vlogging to reach out to people on what you've experienced, and can I just say straight off that it's fantastic and amazing and so brave of you to come and speak so openly, first of all in front of 200 of your peers. What was that like?
It was really I was so anxious. I was really anxious, and mental health is such a big topic and it can be really sensitive. So and I've always not been a very confident person, and through my blog and YouTube I definitely can say that I've gained confidence, and having to say my mental health journey in front of those 200 people was quite scary, but I'm so glad I did it. It was definitely worth it.
Tell us what age you were when you did that.
I was 15. So I'm 16 now, but yeah, I was 15.
And how did you feel when you had it done? I mean, was the reaction positive immediately? Did it get more positive? How did it evolve?
Well, actually that night I received quite a lot of messages, and majority of them were positive. I had peers saying that they were glad I spoke out, because finally they weren't ashamed to say that they were suffering too, and to see someone else be honest and be so open about it can really help other people. And I've noticed that, and seeing that positive change and difference, I felt like if I can do more, what more of a difference can it make, sort of thing.
And it was really fantastic of the school to give you that platform to stand up in an assembly in front of 200 people.
Definitely.
That must be quite... It's also risky for the school to kind of make sure that, you know, you're okay doing that.
And Sans, how did the teachers respond to you doing it?
My teachers were very supportive. Throughout my whole experience, my teachers and the rest of the school, I think my school is very supportive when it comes to mental health and well-being, and they do take into consideration your well-being and mental health, and it's nice to know that they care and they want the best for you, and you can really, because my support network at school is amazing, which is one of the reasons I stayed on for sixth form, because I knew every single teacher was there for me, and if you ever needed anything, they were there to talk to. So yeah.
And what was can you remember like some of the most significant messages that you got? Was anyone else in the audience feeling the way you did?
I was really surprised actually, because before I knew that mental health was quite common, and I know that is getting more common, but after I did that assembly, I didn't quite realise actually how many people suffer from people I knew that I've been like seeing every single day for 5 years. I never realised that they must have gone through something, so it was quite shocking, but in a good way I suppose, because to know that I'm not alone and there are loads of other people out there that are feeling the same, and you just don't notice it.
And did you feel when you started the blog and you were writing about these things, that's also putting yourself out there, isn't it? Especially online?
At first I was quite scared, because I always thought I would get targeted, especially because I used to think that I was weak to be having a mental illness, and putting myself out there, I always thought that it was easier for people to target me and hate on me, and I did get that, but majority of the people did support me.
So you also find a lot of resilience against those kind of nasty trolls, aren't they called that? So it's just a sort of way of life now, that if you're in public life in some capacity.
Exactly. And I think, like I said, I never really had the confidence to speak out in person to people, and I found that the blog was a way of me expressing everything that I wanted to say in that platform, in that way.
And how did your family feel about you doing it?
Well, my blog started off as more beauty and fashion related, so mental health didn't come into it until Time to Talk Day came about, and I was like, you know what, it's too important and there's nothing I can lose by it's all positive, to be honest. And once my parents and my family found out that I was going to speak up about it, it was quite, I'd say it was quite difficult, because coming from the background I'm from, my parents never really knew what mental health was, and in their childhood, if you ever mention mental health, it'll be seen as such a negative thing, and that's just the way they've been brought up. And it's amazing how much my parents have been able to understand in the last 2 years since my diagnosis, and I'm like forever grateful for that.
So you're kind of educating everybody at once.
I feel like I got my parents to understand that it wasn't a bad thing about opening up. It's actually a good thing, because so many people are suffering, and there's no point in not saying anything, because you're just going to cause more harm, I guess. And I think keeping quiet is pretty dangerous, especially that young people, it's happening to young people so common and so often now. So
And I'd love to tell the listeners a little bit about your journey with CAMHS. How was your experience?
I was quite scared at first. I think at first, when I was referred to CAMHS, they did tell me that I had to wait quite a few months, and then it was so evident at school and at home that I needed the support straight away. and I was not going to wait months for that support. So my school had contact with CAMHS, and we kind of pushed it a little bit forward. Within a month, I got my first appointment. I find that CAMHS helped me a lot, but they did let me down a bit as well in the last 2 years, and especially I know other people I know who have been let down by CAMHS too. And don't get me wrong, I was forever grateful for their service, and they did help me a lot, but I feel like sometimes it's not doing enough for the young people now.
Do you think it stops too soon? Is that what you mean, or it isn't as comprehensive?
I think
for you,
I feel like I could have gone on with CAMHS a little bit longer, but they were so sure to say I was okay about moving on. And I also think the part of them letting people down, especially young people, the mental health conference that I went to, in Hitchin, the Priory School, in October, they mentioned that so many young people, when they've gone to the GP, they've been sent away because they're not sick enough. And it disgusts me almost, because how can you tell a young person who's might be feeling depressed or whatever it is that they're feeling, that it's not enough for them to get help? And I just find it a bit sad, really. So yeah.
And so you mentioned the mental health conference that you went to. Tell us more about that.
Well, it was in October, and around 9 of us from my school went, and it was at the Priory School in Hitchin. It was the first conference of its kind in the UK. So there was no other mental health conference in education before that, which was so surprising, because it's 2016 and this is the first one. But I was really grateful that I was part of it. I vlogged the whole day. It is on YouTube, and I also was tweeting during the day. There was, at the Priory School, we had loads of workshops, and there was workshops like yoga, art therapy, self-harm awareness, suicide prevention, and teachers went also. I think there was only one primary school there, the rest was secondary school. And we had speakers come in, and they were talking to us about their own experience and how we can develop awareness of mental health and well-being in schools, because we felt that schools weren't doing enough. So yeah, that's...
And Sans, do you think there's a role? We've heard a lot in the media, haven't we, about schools not doing enough, and but they're under tremendous pressure as institutions, aren't they?
Yeah.
What do you think for parents listening? I think suicide and self-harm are really scary words to families.
Yeah.
And how would you like to advise any parents listening who are worried about how to talk to their child about mental health? How do you start about that conversation, would you suggest?
I think there's little things that you can see with your children that I noticed in myself after a while. The way they behave and the way they talk to you and the way they carry themselves, I think. Because for me, I didn't go out much and I didn't do much of the things that I was interested in.
So there was a big shift in your hobbies and interests and a drop in your kind of energy levels.
Yeah,
and did that happen quite quickly?
Definitely. I think it did happen quite quickly. But my behaviour, and I think the way I seemed around people was quite gradual, because I'd say it took me 7 to 9 months to open up and make a doctor's appointment for my mental health, and it took just the last 3 months for my family to notice, which shows how well it can be hidden at the early stages.
Yeah, and especially at your age, a lot of parents might just she's a teenager, it's a hormone, so a lot of the things are very much easily disguised.
That's
a lot of those symptoms,
because like you can be diagnosed at the age of 5 and people would not realise. Like a 5-year-old can be showing symptoms of a mental illness and you just think they're just being a kid, they're just They don't know what they're doing.
So what about for parents listening who have no idea if their child is happy, well, but you know, how do you have a conversation? Do you think, what should they ask their children, as well as watching for visible signs?
I think it's about having that relationship with your child as well, being able to talk to them daily about how their day's been, and if you have that bond with your child, I guess your child will feel able to talk to you if there was something wrong.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think from when you're very, very young, having that bond with your parents and being able to trust them with stuff, or being able to talk to them about things that you might be uncomfortable about, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. And also, you know, the support you've shown, that there's social support out there. It don't have to be your friends, but you've got lots of, you know, if what you're trying to do is show that there's lots of support elsewhere. It doesn't have to even be in your friendship circle, in all the organisations you've mentioned, and your own sort of offering.
That's the thing, because at first I was really hesitant to contact any organisation, because I thought, oh, I don't know them, I can't possibly do that without telling my family, but it takes up a lot of courage, especially with me. I feel like I could have opened up a lot sooner, and I feel like I could have recovered a lot sooner if I did that. But I think being able to notice yourself changing is the biggest thing.
That's a really good point, isn't it?
So noticing yourself rather than other people noticing you, and accepting that you have changed, and accepting your mental illness.
I think everyone can recognise putting on a brave face. When everyone has felt that their exterior doesn't match the interior, but what you're describing is you reached a point where it was no longer possible to hide it.
Because there used to be days where I used to go to school and everybody literally used to think I was okay, because it was at that point where I could pretend I was okay and people believed it. But when it gets to that point where people don't believe it and you haven't told anybody about it, you're a bit stuck, and you're like, I don't want to feel like this anymore, and you do anything to not feel like this. That's kind of where my point was. I had enough of keeping it in, and it just came out.
But also you seemed to be able to recognise that it wasn't part of you, it was external to you. Something was afflicted on you.
Because I remember saying to the first therapist I used to talk to, I described it as I just didn't feel myself anymore. And when I didn't feel myself anymore, that was when I was like, I'm not me, this isn't right, there's something wrong with me. And
which sounds very much like a physical illness as well, doesn't it? Which is quite an interesting analogy that you did. I think that's a brilliant description, and so useful to people, isn't it?
I think also another thing why doctors or GPs, whoever it is, might push away young people is because mental health is something you can't notice as well as you can with physical illness. It's like I saw this thing online once, and if I had a broken leg you'd come running to me, but if I had a broken mind you wouldn't even know. So it's kind of, they've run the opposite way.
But equally I think GPs are under so much. They know there's an 18-week waiting list for CAMHS.
Exactly. And I mean, I think GPs bear a lot of sense of responsibility, and they're not fully equipped to deal with I think the amount of people, young people that are coming to see them. But I'm going to upset the schools now by asking you about pressure, academic pressure. I know schools are in a difficult position because they don't want to, but they have to perform. How do you feel about the pressure that's put on children?
Well, I feel like the pressure on students at schools to do well has definitely increased huge amounts, I'd say, because especially now that I feel like education's making things a lot harder at different stages of whether you're in primary school, secondary school, degree level, and I also think that it's important that the schools realise that how much pressure they're putting on those students, because if you're putting that amount of pressure on all of the students are going to are thinking they have to cope with that pressure because everybody else is. And if everybody else is coping with that pressure, they can't speak out and say, I'm not coping, because it wouldn't seem normal, because everybody else is coping with that pressure that people are putting on them, so they have to deal with it as well. But really, not everyone has the same mental states. Like, nobody is the same in the way they deal with things. So I feel like it's hard for students to speak out and say, this pressure is too much for me, but they feel like they have to deal with it on their own, which they don't at all. And I feel like the schools might not know that the pressure is too much for the students. So if they were to know, like, I have no doubt they obviously would, hopefully they would help the students. But I think the students will seem like there being a weakness amongst all the other students, and they're not being strong enough like all the other students are, getting on with all the pressure that they've been given.
And tell us a little bit about the Harmony Club that's coming up in your school.
Well, the Harmony Club is being relaunched. It used to be called Here For You at my school, so it's being relaunched after Christmas, and it involves drama clubs and art therapy, which is a session that I'll be leading. I want to go into art therapy in the future, and I've named the art therapy mindfulness art. So every 3 weeks I'd run a session for the younger students in my school, and they'd be able to express themselves through art, whether it's Play-Doh, drawings, storyboards, and hopefully it's quite popular. And because I know, for me especially, I found it really hard to talk at first, which is why I started to draw a lot more. I do art A-level right now, and a couple of years ago, when I couldn't speak out to people, I used to draw my emotions, and people would not be able to understand when I'm trying to talk to them. But if they saw my art, they were like, okay, I know what you mean, I know what's going on in your head, because people interpret it in such a different way. And I feel like the drawings and the art I make are so powerful to me, and so it's personal, but people could relate to that personal.
And it reminds me very much, a few weeks ago we had a very similar age people on the show talking about her writing about mental health.
Yeah.
So all of you are just like a natural expression, a communication of pain, isn't it? And there's lots of ways to express that which you're describing.
And we've a fantastic example of what exactly Sans is talking about, and we're going to pop it on our Facebook page, of painting that you did this year. Was it this year?
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks ago for my mock exam.
Fantastic.
Did a mental health art piece,
Great. We're going to take a little break now and come straight back with Sans, and then we'll be talking to Joe Maher from VISTA. Welcome back to the Parents Show on Radio Verulam 92.6 FM. Tonight we're talking about mental health in schools, and we've had the great pleasure of listening to Sans, who's an outspoken vlogger and blogger and passionate about improving mental health in schools. She's a young student in a St Albans school, and we've had so many fantastic thoughts from her. We're going to move on now to Joe Maher from VISTA and come back to Sans to hear her a little bit more about her experience. Now, Joe, you're from VISTA St Albans. If anybody's living under a stone and doesn't know what VISTA is, can you explain to them what it is?
Hi, Lydia. Yes, VISTA runs services for all 49 schools in St Albans. There are approximately 19,000 pupils in our primary, special and secondary schools. We really focus on parent support, and we work with children and young people who need multi-agency support as well. So we run emotional wellbeing courses and programs, mentoring and counselling. and that's in school and after school. A pupil can be referred to us by the school, by other services, and parents can come to us direct as well. I thought I'd bring some statistics, don't want to frighten your listeners, but mental health is a really, really current issue at the moment, and it is important to talk about it from the school aspect as well. So these stats are from Young Minds. 1 in 10 children aged 5 to 16 years suffer from a diagnosable mental health disorder. So that is around 3 in every class. More than half of all adults with mental health problems were diagnosed in childhood, and less than half of those were treated appropriately at the time. Nearly 80,000 children and young people suffer from severe depression. We've just listened to Sans and how big that issue is, and over 8,000 of these are under 10. 72% of children in care have behavioural and emotional problems. These are some of the most vulnerable people in our society, so a huge worry. And the number of young people aged 15 to 16 with depression nearly doubled between the 80s and the 2000s. So yes, mental health is growing, and growing in concern as well.
And Joe, what's your own feeling about, it struck me when we were speaking to Sans that actually, because we're talking about these things that our grannies and great grannies and all suffered from but never talked about, they're being recognised rapidly, more so than they ever have been. But what do you feel are the real causes of such a rise? Because it's undoubted, isn't it, that it's undoubtedly true that it's
definitely moving, and obviously culture and society changes, and the things that young people have to deal with these days is escalating from all different angles. I'm not an expert on the subject, and I have an opinion, and obviously some of what I say is probably from the schools, and the schools what they're having to deal with, but the families that we support and the children that do suffer from mental health issues, I really do think sometimes the services come in too late. Sans mentioned about CAMS, and the waiting list for CAMS is too long, and the service is not good enough, if I'm allowed to say that. There are other services coming to the forefront, which is great, but there's not enough out there really to help these young people who really need help immediately, not later on. So I think some of the causes and the families we support, definitely school exams and the pressure on homework. I actually personally see 10 secondary school students every week and talk to them about emotional behaviour issues, and the testing that is done. I mean, these students are always undergoing tests, and it surprised me, what, another test? Are you doing this again? And it is, the pressure is incredible, but that's, the government is putting that pressure on our schools.
Absolutely. I mean, there isn't a teacher in the country who would, who would
They're under
disagree
that pressure.
With you, but they have to do it.
Yeah. I think peer pressure is obviously key as well for some children who struggle with friendships. I mean, you look back to your own childhood and you think, what was really important in your own childhood? The friends you had, the family and friends, the people in the street, the neighbourhood. So peer pressure can be huge and be a big cause of the problem. Trauma can lead to severe panic attacks, anxieties. Social media is obviously something that adults possibly, but certainly adults of my age don't understand, but it's so immediate. And
goes hand in hand with cyberbullying. Would you agree, Sans, with that
Definitely.
one?
Yeah. And it can cause a lot of isolation, because if you're indoors all the time on your iPad or, on the internet, you're not literally physically out there with friends and really getting some fresh air and seeing the world and the environment. I'm a big believer in get out the house and go and do something active.
And equally, it's a new way of socialising that has its own etiquette and way of, you have to use your emojis well, you have to communicate your thoughts with images. It's all very complicated, isn't it? And if you have your phone under the duvet, as many teenagers do at 9 o'clock at night, and somebody texts them something unpleasant, well, that's going to keep you up all night, isn't it? So I think that technology, that relationship to technology, is
and there's been an awful lot of research, and if we focus on the teenagers, some of our staff have done My Teen Brain training, and the actual technology, the light and everything, that the teenagers switch it off too late, and you're meant to actually relax for an hour before you go to sleep, and then the brain is actually not getting enough relaxation. Family breakdown is huge, which can cause anxiety, particularly with the younger ones, the primary school children that we support. There's a lot of absent dads. And the worry that is caused, and the loss by families breaking up and parents separating. We work and support a lot of young carers who obviously they actually suffer a great deal of mental health when they're working and supporting somebody with illness in the family. And just generally society and culture. There's a fantastic report that came out in 2011 called the Good Childhood Inquiry, which, if you fancy a good read, it was published by the Children's Society, and it is literally about comparing 50 years ago to life today with the family and the different pressures. And it's absolutely huge and escalating.
Yeah, I think what you're both describing on a positive note is that there are so many other structures that can help us. So rather than just relying on the GP, you're offering a support system for people your age, Sans, and Joe's offering a whole raft of options for people locally. So I think people need to realise, importantly, that's a really core message of the show, that there's lots of help available. Yeah. You just need to know where to sort of find it.
Yeah, I think parent support is key. VISTA supports parents, and a lot of them do struggle and they do flounder. They do need help with parenting. Behaviour is a product or a result of feelings. So when your 8-year-old suddenly starts behaving differently, it is difficult to understand what is underneath, and what is the cause of that. Children, and particularly some young people, I think Sans mentioned about you've got to have a really good bond with your child. Not every child feels they can talk to their mum or dad, so it is important to have someone in school that students and children can talk to.
But Joe, have you noticed like a rise in, say, pastoral care in schools? Because now there's things called pastoral managers, which we definitely didn't have as kids, and I think... Well, have you noticed that
it's absolutely great, and even in the primary schools there are key workers on that pastoral sort of level. Secondary schools have counsellors in schools employed, but the demand is higher than they can offer, and so that's why you still need these outside services as well. There is counselling in schools which is called Safe Space, offered by Herts County Council, and obviously VISTA does offer mentoring and counselling, so we do offer a lighter touch which is more of a listening ear, and then if counselling is needed, then obviously that's more therapeutic. I think one of the things we're seeing happen at the moment is that parents will phone me up and say, my child needs counselling, and actually sometimes you don't want to dive into a therapy straight away. You need just to unpick a bit, build a relationship. So we've got some fantastic people who work with one-to-one with pupils. Boys are something I'd like to raise because some of them lack male role models, so we do have a couple, 2 to 3 wonderful male mentors who do wonders working with boys who do struggle. We know, I'm not being stereotypical, but they do struggle with talking about their emotions and feelings, and if there isn't a dad in the home, it's even harder for them. So we often think that actually a lighter approach first off, but then, yes, if counselling is needed, you do need to act quickly, and I don't think Cam's waiting time is too long. And as San said, she had to wait nearly 4 months, and even then it finished before she really wanted it to finish. So I know they're going through a 5-year transformation at the moment, and they are going to focus on prevention, and that is the key. That's what we need, is early intervention. We need people to be supported, to build their resilience, to help with their self-esteem, so that it doesn't get so bad. Yeah. That's what we want.
And it goes with what San says, recognising in yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think
Definitely.
that's even for adults, that's a great piece of advice.
And
isn't it?
your insight, Sans, is amazing. Could you tell our listeners what you think about when parents should be looking out for early signs? This blew my mind when we were talking on Monday.
I think that you can, like I said earlier, you can be diagnosed at the age of 5. I know someone who is 21 and she suffers from schizophrenia. She got diagnosed with schizophrenia when she was 9 years old. And if you look at a 9-year-old and they show symptoms of schizophrenia, you'd be like, they're just being a child, they're being crazy, if some people call it. But I know some people might say and argue that you'd be jumping to conclusions, but honestly, it's worth looking into, because you don't want to have to regret it afterwards, saying that you left it too late. Because that friend of mine, she's been suffering for ages, and she hasn't had the support from her parents because they simply don't understand. So it is quite sad.
That it is an eye-opener that we should be paying attention at primary school. And Joe, you'd
I started our service 11 years ago. VISTA actually started 5 years ago, and 5-6 years ago we weren't counselling really any primary school pupils at all. Yes, their secondary school were actually offering services like that. At the moment, we literally counsel and mentor about 128 pupils every week, and we've seen 83 primary school pupils this autumn term, which is a huge amount, and more coming through the door. And as San says, 5-6-year-olds are needing this. They have high anxieties, they can't cope, they struggle at school, the parents are struggling. So it is a really, really big issue at the moment. I think one of the main worries is that obviously it is a health issue, and I work for schools, and is it fair for teachers to actually have to, be aware of and deal with the health issues as well? Sometimes there are queues outside the door. The school nurses aren't physically in a school anymore, so it is quite, a teacher trains to teach, and a school is a place of education at the end of the day, and more health is interfering, if you like, with a child's education.
I think it's important as well what you said about schizophrenia. It's important to differentiate, isn't it, between mental illness and mental ill health.
Yeah.
So any sign of your child being anxious, it doesn't mean they're going to have a mental health disorder, but it means that there's something there that needs to be nipped in the bud and looked at and explored. So there's a huge spectrum, isn't there?
Yeah. Because I feel like everybody has mental health. No one is perfect. Like, everyone has their ups and downs. Some people are in low mood sometimes,
which is normal, isn't it?
Which is normal, yeah. I was just thinking about what Joe said about parents. At the mental health conference, I met the Self Harm UK organisation, who help parents cope with their children with mental illnesses, and I currently work with them, and I've so far 2 of my blog posts have been published on their website. I've been working for them for a few months now. My first blog post for them was called Finding Myself, and that's how what I mentioned about how I felt like I wasn't myself anymore. And then my second one was called Self-Harm is Real, and that was about how I got targeted saying that I was self-harming for attention, and I've been called an attention seeker for how many times I don't know, but it's quite horrible. Like, and at the moment I'm currently working on a blog post about the glamorization of mental health, and I mentioned before how there used to be companies out there selling and promoting mental health in a way that it shouldn't be at all. There was t-shirts by can't remember what shop it was now, but promoting eating disorders, and there were words, and just I can't remember on the top of my head, but it was disgusting, like the way people were promoting mental health, like, oh my god, you should have it. It's kind of like, what?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because so many celebrities have come out and said, almost all of them, Adele this year, that they've had depression, anxiety, all these things. But, you know, in some ways it's helped, but in some ways it hasn't helped, because it just becomes too normalised, doesn't it?
That's the thing.
And, you know, it's still the exception to feel as low as that. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? It becomes fashionable amongst the celebrities to say they have to say they've had something. Do you know what I mean?
It's fashionable, and the comedians often suffer from depression, and
every celebrity you can think of.
Bulimia and various conditions and stuff, and yet one of the other main causes of our young people is the self-image and the worry about, you have to be successful, you have to be thin and beautiful, you know,
and then sort of expose your body in as many ways as you possibly can online.
I feel like that affected me quite a lot, actually. In the first 6 months since my diagnosis, I used to think, I had to look a certain way, and I let media representation or celebrities or even my peers, other people around me, make me think that I had to look a certain way, and I don't know whether that was just me assuming it, but there was a point where I kind of restricted myself from food, and it was a way of self-harm, I suppose, because I knew I needed food, but I didn't allow myself to eat, because I felt like there was a point where I restricted myself 1 meal a day, because I felt like that's more than enough, and it almost came normal to me, and I kind of disliked food afterwards. It's like I didn't want to eat because I didn't like food anymore. I felt like it wasn't a necessity. So,
but again, you were recognising that that's not exactly doesn't feel right, does it? Wow.
Well, we've posted on our Facebook page, so if anybody's listening to this as a podcast, please go to the Facebook page, the Parent Show Facebook page. You'll see links for your lovely art, Sans, and all the links to your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
And your blog, and tell us a little bit. So your YouTube channel is up and running. How often do you post?
Well, recently I haven't been as active because of school mocks and stuff like that, but I used to post every Sunday from January, and I think I've got about 10 videos up. A few of them are vlogs of in August I went to a bloggers festival that I got invited to, and I was able to network with lots of people there. I did the vlog about the mental health conference, and currently I'm planning my filming about my mental health story in a video form, just sitting down and talking through mental health and what I've been through. So I hope to keep it going. I do have a passion for inspiring people, I guess, if you can say. I want to be that person that people can look up to when I wasn't able to look up to someone like who had gone through all of that, and I want people to be able to say, she's gone through all of this and she's still here, sort of thing.
She's a role model for us. And do you have like an idea of what you're going to be doing after school, or?
Like I said, I want to go into art therapy. I quite like art, and I like the idea of helping people. I feel like my blog and YouTube is something that I'd like to keep as a hobby. But of course, if like, I do hope for it to grow, and if it was to grow enough, I'd be happy to take it on full time, sort of thing. But I want to go into art therapy. I've been thinking about art and psychology at degree level, and maybe masters in art psychotherapy, but I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll put bets on that you'll probably get there, Sans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that would be amazing if you could do that, and the demand is there, definitely.
Yeah.
And Jo, can we just come back to you to just have a run through of the services, that the solutions that you have for parents, because you've a great list of things, and I think it'd be brilliant to share them.
Yeah, I do think parents are a very key part of this, and if parents are struggling, they do need to seek help themselves. Sometimes, unfortunately, some parents don't realise that it's their anxieties that are being transferred onto the child. Hertfordshire have a new strategy which is called the Families First Early Help Strategy, and that is all about early intervention and prevention. We obviously offer emotional wellbeing and counselling support in schools, as I think I mentioned before about safe space. There's some lovely strategies being taken up by schools, like protective behaviours or families feeling safe, the Penn Resilience Programme. In primary schools mainly, but also secondary schools, nurture. There are nurture areas being set up in schools which are fantastic. Hearts Young Homeless offer mediation between parents and teenagers. Youth Talk, which Sans has been to, and you value that. The As One Wellbeing Service, which is fantastic as well. There's an online counselling service called Couth, because not every young person wants to speak to a counsellor face to face. It's a great online service which is commissioned by Hearts, County Council, and Young Minds. I mean, my key message is you need to talk to somebody. There's always somebody you can find to talk to. It doesn't have to be your mum or dad, but someone in school or neighbour, auntie, grandma, granddad.
And equally, there's Childline, isn't there?
Yeah.
That people can always access.
You must find somebody to talk to.
So CAMS is not the be-all and end-all. If you get an answer like Sans of you've got to wait 4 months, you're saying don't wait 4 months, get talking.
I think so, yes. It is difficult if you're told to wait 4 months.
You
can't wait. I think the GPs know that, and the GPs are also supporting a lot of these other services.
And is there great awareness about these services, and is there any cost, actually, very importantly, attached to any particular ones?
Some are and some are not, but I would say they're affordable if you can access that. But again, the schools are funding a lot of these services, and the first port of call could be your school. If you really don't know where to go, ask for help. Every school, as I say, belongs to VISTA St Albans, so there's a school family worker dedicated to each school that is there to support the families, and we'll find and signpost parents to the right place.
Fantastic. I mean, that's wonderful. And did you know, Sans, that so much existed out there?
No, I did not. I felt like I didn't know much about mental health at all when I was feeling the way I was before my diagnosis. I didn't realise there was so much out there. I felt like it was the doctors and my family, that's it, really. And I think it would have helped massively, because like you mentioned, Couth, I know someone who does use Couth, and it is helping. So it's important that people know how much help there is out there, and it's not limited.
And it's completely all different types of help.
Yeah,
it could speak to a peer. You can have your parents speak to someone. There's help for everybody, isn't it? And either you can signpost people, Jo, to so many different services. Yeah. So you should probably flag up how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah. It's on the Facebook page already. You've got a brand new website, haven't you?
Yes,
it's a perfect opportunity for us to flag it up. So it's on our Facebook page, and Sans, you've had your first like for your amazing painting. It's the first of many, I'm sure. I'm sure it is. So great, we've come to the end of the show. Sans, thank you very much for joining us on the Parents Show. Joe, thanks a million as always.
Thank you.
We need to get you on more regularly. Thanks very much. If anybody's listening, you can, if you're listening to us live, you can listen to a podcast on the Parents Show iTunes account anytime. You can subscribe to our account, and very importantly, if there are any subjects that you as a parent want us to be touching on, or if you'd like to come on to the show about a particular subject, send us an email to parentshow@radioverulam.com, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you very much for listening to The Parent Show. I'm Lydia El-Khoury.
And I'm Kathy Weston.
Neves Solicitors are proud to sponsor The Parent Show. The friendly team at Neves includes specialists who can guide you through all the legal ups and downs of family life. Visit nevessolicitors.co.uk. Neves Solicitors, your complete legal solution.